With the first pick,
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. Make sure you check out Stadium Rant's YouTube channel. We got tons of great content on there and all social media platforms. On today's episode of the Fantasy Rant podcast, we're going to be breaking down 3 incoming rookies from LSU. And hopefully we'll have enough time to be talking about some free agent quarterbacks, predicting some landing spots, breaking down, the market, see how this goes. But at the top here, we got 2 of our guys made a trade in Dynasty. I'm curious to hear how this went. Oh, why is this up? My bad, boys.
For our trade, so me and Lee did a trade. I gave the 102 T. Higgins for the 109 Garrett Wilson and 408. I think it was 408.
Give that to me again.
Garrett Wilson, the 408, the 109 for T. Higgins, and the 102.
Ooh, and a super flex?
Super flex, yeah.
Tight end premium as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, the tight end premium would be nice for that 9th pick if I thought Bowers would drop that fall, but in the tight end premium, there's no shot of that. So I personally lean just slightly towards the Higgins and 102 side. I think that Wilson is a healthy step above Higgins, but I really don't think like that 102 is priceless, man. You're getting Caleb or Marvin Harrison Jr. That is massive. Arguably best. If it's Marvin Harrison Jr., he might immediately be the best wide receiver of the 3.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot I thought about it, but I mean, Wilson, I don't see him that much lower than Marvin Harrison Jr., at least this year with Rodgers back. And then the 109, hoping maybe like Brian Thomas or somebody.
Yeah, no, that'd be solid. I like Brian Thomas, but yeah. What do you think, Evan?
I think I was highest on Garrett Wilson going into this past season out of us when we did our rankings. So I do love me some Garrett Wilson, but that is a pretty penny, and that is I'm outpriced by him too. So I'm probably maybe a little closer than Dan, but you also said slightly, so it's close. Yeah. It's a good fair trade. It's a good fair trade. But
I do agree with that.
I would lean on the youth. When in doubt, I go youth. You're getting Marvin Harrison or Caleb there, and
it was a tough negotiation. We went back and forth. Mason may have been in the bottle a little bit. I was distracted with a poker game. I'm hopeful that Marv is the guy. I mean, if I have to take Caleb at 2, we discussed a little bit before the show, just the way that draft breaks down. I may even consider Nabers at 2 and then just taking, because I have the 5th pick as well, and just taking whichever of the 3 quarterbacks lands with me. Not sure exactly what I'm going to do if Marv doesn't drop to 2, but I love Garrett. I mean, big fan. I am a little concerned long term. I can't see Aaron Rodgers' level of play beyond 1 season. I mean, he may play 2. Heck, he could get hurt and be out again. Could be a steep drop off for him anyway. So, as much as I love the talent, I guess it's that thought of the unknown. And please don't go to New England, Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question. If Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Patriots, how much does that change? Evan, I'll start with you since you're not in the trade. How much would that change your opinion on it?
It wouldn't. I don't think it would. I think that the Patriots have a bad stigma with their name right now. Because they don't have a lot of weapons. And the bad stigma is the people are worried about what QB is going to go there. But I guess the same question could be raised. Well, if they do go wide receiver early in the draft, what QB is going to be there. So that's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot of question marks there. So, but it's a fresh start. No Bill. And I think that the stigma I should kind of think about this with a clean slate, and it's hard to.
It is hard to. There's just years and years of terrible Patriots offense. And so I was just looking at it, though. Funny enough, so the back-to-back, Garrett Wilson right now, Fantasy Pros Dynasty rankings, number 6, and Marvin Harrison Jr., number 7. Back-to-back in the rankings there. And then on top of it, Evan, you were talking about who would the Patriots bring in at QB. If they did go Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, they do have the second highest salary cap in the league right now, $69.5 million in salary cap space. So that is pretty nice. They could definitely go out there and bring in anybody that they want. We'll talk more about some free agent quarterbacks later in the show. But for now, we are going to get on to the rookie evaluations. All right, we got 3 to get through, Jensen. We've been going like 30 minutes at least per evaluation. So let's try to keep these ones short. But we got Jayden Daniels to kick it off, 6'4" quarterback out of LSU, 210 pounds and 23.2 years old. He did play 5 seasons. One of them was a redshirt injury season. A little bit older of a prospect. However, we've seen him improve over his time. He's definitely taken some big steps up year after year. And I think that goes a long way. Just a guy that can learn and adjust, fix his flaws. But let's get into the nitty gritty here. We'll bring up some stats as we go along, but let's jump into the positives. Mason, I'm going to kick it to you. What are some of the positives you saw when breaking down the tape?
I mean, obviously, the first thing that anyone who watches and sees that dude can run. And he's very agile. He's got great speed. Fantasy running quarterbacks are always great. Gets a little more points and passing yards. He's got great deep accuracy as well. Just watching highlights of him, he's just putting them on the dot every time it's deep. And, he's making some good over the shoulder throws. He's got a great arm when it comes to being deep, and that in a mix of being able to break out these large runs. He's going to have some games in the NFL where he just absolutely wins your week of fantasy.
Just to touch on that deep passing there, for all quarterbacks in the FBS with at least 40 attempts of 20 yards or more, he was first in completion percentage at 63.6%. He was 4th in completions, 4th in passing yards, and number 1 by a long shot in yards per attempt and touchdowns. On top of it, of those targets, 20-plus yards, 0 interceptions. So that's really highlighting that deep ball accuracy you're talking about there. Lee, what else do you got to add?
Yeah, I mean, Mason really hit on it. He's 6'4". We'll get into some of the negatives around the frame, but he is 6'4". So, you can see over your big offensive lineman. He's a dynamic runner by a ton. So, really that early floor is what really stands out. The age is a little bit scary, but the flip side of that is, a couple of years in the SEC, 3 years in the Pac-10 before Pac-12 before that, so the experience to come in and be a guy who's not going to make a ton of mistakes and be able to add to your team early. Great accuracy, like as May said, on the deep ball, but really just a guy who did not make a ton of mistakes this year. And that's really the part that if you go back and look at him, even in his first year in LSU, but especially the Arizona State years, that's where he really seemed to take the biggest step forward. The playmaking was always there, but he made a lot of mistakes early. He cleaned that part of his game up. And if he can keep in that trajectory, definitely an above average NFL starter out of the gate.
100%. Evan?
Yeah. I mean, Mason, you hit the 2 big things that I had, his run ability and his deep ball accuracy. I think what has to do with those stats, the amazing stats about his deep ball accuracy too, Dan. And I think a lot of that has to do with also his ability to create his pocket presence, to create plays after, plays are broken up and to extend plays and things like that. And I think that, you look at the run ability and you think, oh yeah, he's going to get yards. That's fantasy relevant. That's fantasy. But being able to extend the plays, I think that really is making more of an impact on his deep balls and being able to get more deep ball opportunities out there too. So yeah, I absolutely love him. I think he has the highest ceiling out of any QB in this class.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that rushing ability. Caleb Williams also has the ability to extend plays. It has the arm talent as well. A little bit more arm talent than Jayden, but the speed, man, speed kills. Mm-hmm. It's going to get you a lot of yards when he sees a little hole, takes off. That was one of the big things that I listed, is that he's decisive. Even though he can extend plays, he doesn't always just choose to try to hit the home run ball every time, a la like Deshaun Watson. He will take what's given to him in the offense. He'll take the quick hit and routes. He doesn't waste time. If he sees a hole open up in the line, he's going to take off the ball. I love that. Don't waste time. Make the move you're going to move. Do it confidently. And then another thing that I listed is that pass first mentality. Even though, again, one of the most athletic quarterbacks definitely in this class, and one of the most athletic to come out in a few years, other than maybe Anthony Richardson, I would say he keeps his eyes downfield. He's always trying to throw the ball, and that's huge. You don't want a guy that just relies on his legs. And then the last thing was just the ball security. In the last 2 years at LSU, 57 touchdowns and 7 interceptions on 722 pass attempts, and then 22 rushing TDs, only 7 fumbles on 145 rushing attempts. Would like to see the fumbles be a little bit lower than that, but that's still pretty solid, all things considered. Just the 14 turnovers with all of that volume. All right. Nathan,
touch on the negative, actually, of what you were saying, though. The ball security. Yeah, if he doesn't throw too many interceptions, but when he runs with the ball, he's kind of reckless the way he holds it. He's not the safest. He doesn't always go for the slide. He'll try extending it a little more. Like, I was watching more highlights, and there's just times where he's getting lit up, and you can't be doing that in the NFL. Something that can easily be fixed, though. All you need is one hard hit from Fred Warner or something.
That's a fact. Yeah, I had the same thing written down here, is that he took some gnarly hits in college, and that's college. The hits are only going to get harder at the NFL level. I feel like he's got amazing speed and acceleration. The agility, not quite as elite as the other two. He's got the agility to make one guy miss, but I feel like a lot of times you see that body flailing, leaving himself open for the next hit, and he gets popped a lot. So between the skinny frame and then, occasional fumbles, I do think that is his biggest negative. Lee, what do you think?
Yeah, so, just kind of adding on to that, the slight frame, I think they've got him listed at 213. There's no way he weighs 213 at the combine, unless he's got bricks in his pants. He reminds me of, and I've got PTSD from it, but RG3 in just his style of running, really inviting contact for a guy his size, not sliding. So I worry about the longevity there. I think as good as his deep ball accuracy is, I don't know that he has elite arm talent. I don't think his arm talent is on the level of Caleb Williams or Drake May, just as far as arm strength. And I do think that could become a problem in the NFL. He's not going to have those receivers running wide open with, 5 yards of cushion, nobody within 5 yards of him in the NFL as much. So I worry about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. The other thing, and this is a little bit nitpicky because he had an amazing season. No doubt. This past season was amazing. He played 2 elite defenses this year, Florida State and Alabama. Alabama wasn't as elite as they were in the past, but if we're just talking the 2 best defense he played, those were the 2 worst games he had. And worse, again, it's relative. He had the lowest completion percentage in both of those games. He had under 220 yards passing against the Alabama defense. Again, he ran for a ton. He ran for 160, so the rushing made up for it. But just looking at the stat line of the whole season, the 2 best defenses were the 2 worst games, and he's going to be playing a lot better defenses in the NFL. But ultimately, again, I don't know if he's got a higher ceiling than Caleb. I don't. I still think Caleb was probably a little bit higher, but I see the ceiling that Evan's talking about. I also think he has the lowest floor of all 3 quarterbacks we're talking about as early first rounders, and that's not because the rushing's there and it'll be there early. How long is his NFL career? How long is he going to be there? Is he going to be a starter for 5 or 6 years, or is he going to be a 2 or 3 year burnout? And there's a little bit of concern there for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Not to jump the gun here, but I feel like some of the comparisons we hear is Justin Fields, and that could definitely be one of those, burn bright and early, and then maybe don't have a second opportunity. Evan, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely I disagree with the floor. I think that the running ability definitely helps stabilize his floor there a little bit and give him some stuff there. But negatives, I didn't see a lot of short range accuracy actually. Like I feel like a few plays that I saw where the running back's getting a chip in and then they're looking back for the ball and it's about 3 yards away from him and they're reaching for it and it's uncatchable. So I don't understand how he can hit these bombs down this deep ball accuracy and then have the short range be so far off. But if he can figure that out, that's really the biggest thing for me. He's also very thin, so size like that and age, those are the negatives for me. But other than that, he's what I want. He's what I want.
Yeah. And just to touch on something Lee said a second ago too, I had the same note in that he doesn't have the elite arm talent that you would love or kind of expect when you see a guy with these deep passing numbers. He's got really solid mechanics. He throws from his base up. He uses his legs. He's always got sound feet. I don't feel like I see him putting himself in a bad position to throw the ball too frequently. But when the power comes from the legs and you got to rely on the arm sometimes, the ball's just not jumping off the fingers like it does for some other quarterbacks. But still, he can make all the throws. It's just not going to get there with the same zip as some other QBs. All right. So that moves us on to ideal landing spots. I'll try to speed it up a little bit here so we can fit everything in today. But I got my top 3. I mean, we're talking ideal Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. No running threat. Say no more. Miami Dolphins, just with that deep ball threat. That's right. Like, that's the one, man. It's hard with Tua still there, but he's on the last year of his deal. So they could bring him in. I don't really see it happening or see.
They do need more speed on that offense too. So
that's just the thing, though. It's like when you got Tyreek and Jayden Waddle stretching the field, you got the threat of a dump off to Achane. Mostert's still there. It's like there's just going to be so much open space sometimes for him to take off. And then the last one I have is the Seahawks. That's mainly because of the plethora of wide receivers they have. Metcalf and Lockett still signed through 25, JSN through 26 with the 5th-year option for 27. Gino just got the roster guarantee, so I don't think he's going to go anywhere this season. However, they might restructure his contract, and at the most, Jayden Daniels gets drafted there somehow. He's going to start, I think, halfway through the season at the latest. But even worst case scenario, he's their starter next year.
Yeah.
Lee, I see you shaking your head with the Dolphins pick there. I take it that was your number 1?
I mean, any offensive player right now, you want to play for Mike McDaniel. So
Yeah.
I had them up there. I actually kind of combined the two. And again, it requires a bit of a trade, but I think Minnesota, if they move on from Kirk Cousins, would be ideal. Because any quarterback, if you get paired with the best wide receiver in the NFL, there's the LSU connection, obviously not there at the same time. Jordan Addison, we're going to have Hawkinson back at some point in the season and for the future. I think Minnesota would be the number 1. And I have the same one as my realistic and my ideal. I think Washington would be a great fit for him. And not saying that because I'm a fan. I think Cliff Kingsbury being his offensive coordinator. We saw what he did with Kyler early on, especially. I know it got a little stale late, but I think his time outside of the league, he's older, he's matured. I think that would be a perfect, RPO offense that Cliff is going to run, and I think he'd be a good fit for it as well.
Yeah. Mason?
Obviously the ones you guys would say would be better fits. I was thinking something that could maybe realistically happen, him to the Falcons. We got new coaching going into there. He's got weapons. Maybe Kyle Pitts could get actually used for once, but Drake London, Bijan, Aligier. I probably butcher his name. I always butcher his name, but whatever. I just think that it's a good. It would be he would have good weapons around him. It's a brand new team. He'd be the face of the franchise pretty much going forward. There's no question to that. I just think it would be he'd get good opportunity and he'd have a decent shot with some solid weapons around him.
Definitely. What about you, Evan?
I got one that I don't think none of you guys said. There's the only one that none of you guys said, but Detroit Lions. I'd like to see what he could do if he unlocks Jamison Williams for that deep ball threat. Amon Ra's a reliable target for him if he can figure out the short game. And then, Hawkinson's also there's plenty of weapons in Detroit there, and with their the strength that they have at running back, I think would also help him out too with his ability to run the ball too.
You mean Laporta, right?
Oh yeah, Laporta. Well, who did I say?
Yeah.
What?
Hawkinson.
Oh yeah, no, Laporta. Yeah.
Both from tight end. You.
Yeah.
All right. So for ideal landing spots, for realistic landing spots, Lee, you already touched on the first one there. Washington, definitely a realistic spot. And then I got New England in order: New England, Giants, and Falcons. Respectively, they have the 3rd, 6th, and 8th pick. I don't think that Daniels makes it past 8, but I would be so upset if he went to New England. We were talking a little bit about it before the show, but man, it just feels like anyone that goes there, it's a death sentence.
Oh my God, I got to show this. I just saw that comment. It's pretty hilarious.
He does kind of look like it, though.
He does.
Hey, Shrek, he ain't writing back. He ain't writing back.
Yeah, thanks for the input, Shrek. I appreciate it.
I got one other one I would add for a realistic that I think would be good. I think the Giants, and kind of for some of the opposite reasons that Evan mentioned the Lions, the Giants are pretty devoid of skill position players. They're probably going to lose Saquon, but they do have Brian Daboll. And obviously it's a different running style with Josh Allen, night and day. But he's a guy who's shown that he can get the most out of a running quarterback. And with the lack of options, Jayden would be the entire offense. I mean, he would rush for 1,200 yards in the first season. I don't know that it's great for his long term, but obviously they're going to add skill positions as well. They do have some tiny wide receivers that can run. Seems to be all they have. But I think he would have a huge first season with the Giants.
I actually really like that too. I think that him and Jalen Hyatt would be a pretty good mix too.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it happening. It'd probably be a good move for the Giants, but then the whole Daniel Jones contract, I don't know a ton about it, but they'd have to figure that out. Yeah. I think New England, which part of me is like, damn, because I don't want him to be lost in New England, but at least Marvin Harrison Jr. wouldn't be there. So,
yeah, right. And yeah, just to touch on the Daniel Jones situation there, he's not going anywhere this year. $69.3 million dead cap. But after this season, dead cap drops to 22.2 before June 1st, with the cap hit of 41.6. So that's like roughly 20 million cap saving. And then if they go after June 1st in 2025, it's 11.1 mil. So definitely a realistic thing to happen, especially that would be $30 million in cap savings post June 1st. So definitely a possibility there. Just to run through these real quick for the player style comp, I have a skinnier Jalen Hurts with a better deep ball. And then really, I'll just run through it. Production comp, I got high end Kyler Murray and low end Jordan Love.
Yeah, my player comp, I got this style. I kind of see some Tyrod Taylor when I watch him play. And then for production comp, high end, I got Lamar just because, the running ability and the dude can throw the ball. Low end, Tyrod Taylor as well.
Lee?
Yeah, I mean, as far as production, I'm going to agree. I think Lamar is the ceiling. I think Marcus Mariota is the floor, which is kind of what scares me there. Very similar builds, similar college production. As far as the playing style goes, I see a lot of RG3 in him.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So I had Lamar as my ceiling and RG3 as the floor. Marcus Mariota is insulting. That's insulting.
It is insulting, but I do agree with the build. Like
he's a little bit. Marcus Mariota is bigger than him.
He's definitely a little bit bigger. He's listed at 6'4", 222 at the combine. But I agree overall. Like the speeds there. I think Jayden Daniels got a little bit more acceleration and agility. But Mariota ran a 4.52 on the 40 at the combine. All right, so I am going to skip over the Dynasty Superflex trade value, and we're going to jump to where would you draft him in a Superflex rookie draft. I personally have him as the 104 behind Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, and then Malik Nabers, depending on your team need.
Yeah, I have him ahead of Malik Nabers there, at 103.
Yeah,
103.
I have him at 103 as well.
I'm between 3 and 4 again on
Right.
the need, but as much as I like Drake, and I do think he has a longer shelf life in the NFL, the rushing floor, I mean, especially if you're in a league that only gives you 4 points for passing touchdowns, it's tough to ignore. I'm probably leaning more towards 4 though, because I do, as we'll talk about in a minute, I really, really like Nabers.
Okay, yeah. And then really quick, we put up a poll on Twitter. Poll states, if Drake May is drafted to the Commanders and Jayden Daniels to the Patriots, who will have the better year one in fantasy? Jayden Daniels slightly outvoted here, 40.4% to 59.6%. Still pretty middle of the pack, though. Pretty split, all things considered, with everyone having the, negative look on the Patriots' offensive situation there. And then
you should do a poll again with reverse landing spots.
Honestly, I will. That sounds fun. I'm definitely down to do that. Then the one other poll that I put up here. Where did she go? There it is. All right. God damn, that was the same one. All right, bear with me 1 second here.
Also, to just touch up on like drafting, where we were saying either him 103, 104, that is also dependent on your team. If you're good on quarterbacks,
sure.
You're not drafting.
For sure.
Him.
Everything's team dependent here. So this is the other one I threw up. I said you have the 104 in a super flex draft. Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, and Drake May are off the board. I listed Jayden Daniels, Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze, and Brock Bowers. Pretty much no votes for Odunze or Bowers. We got Nabers at 52.1% and Jayden Daniels at 38.2%. Both of these polls got at least 450 votes. The other one got over 600. So both pretty solid sample sizes and, just something to think about moving forward if you're in these draft spots. But that leads us into our next player to talk about, Malik Nabers up on the board. This time I'm going to kick it off with Evan. Evan, what you thinking on Malik Nabers?
I love me some Malik Nabers. He is definitely the clear number 2 for me, and I think there's a big gap between 2 and 3, but not that big. There's definitely a bigger drop off at like 6 or 7, but he's got a full route tree. I think he's the second most NFL ready wide receiver on here, and his ability to stop and start in his routes without losing any momentum. He's got a great separation, so he seems like a pretty complete receiver. Not really. Overly impressive at any specific thing. So just very well-rounded receiver for me, from my perspective. The one thing I did notice though, is he had a 65.5% catch rate on passes over 20 yards. So that's very impressive. So I was happy to see his deep ball ability there too, and some of the playmaking ability there. But I wanted to see a little bit more yards after a catch for somebody his size. But overall, very, very impressive guy.
One thing that stood out was a big stat from PFF. Since 2022, he had the highest receiver grade against zone coverage and the second highest against man coverage. So, he's beating them no matter what the coverage is. When they play press man, he does struggle a little, or actually struggles a lot. But and then just that, and he's a flexible route runner. I mean, he can do anything. He could take slants, curls, deep routes, whatever. And he's shown that he can do them all.
Absolutely. Lee?
Yeah, so, I mean, he's fast. He's fast. He creates separation. The release is very strong, has a very well-rounded route tree already. I kind of was surprised to hear you say that, the yak, and I don't know the exact numbers, but to me, I thought he looked really impressive with the yards after the catch. Probably more so than Marv. I think in any other year, I think he would be a clear wide receiver 1 and a top 5 pick in the draft. Because of the quarterback heaviness of this draft and Marv being in front of him, he may slip. He's not going past 10. And, he has a legitimate chance to be the best wide receiver out of this draft. Marvin Harrison is great. Don't get me wrong. He's got a ton of hype. But Nabers is a prototypical X receiver in the NFL, and he's ready to play right now. 2 great years of production profile as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and to touch on the yak there, he was out of 138 wide receivers in the FBS. I put the minimum at 70 targets. He was 6th in terms of overall yak yards, but he was 34th of the 138 qualifying wide receivers in yak per reception. So 6.7 yards after the catch per reception. That's still very solid. To be 34 out of 138, that's still pretty solid. But I do think that there is the perception of like this incredible yak ability, and he is. He's got the, that stop go and right back up to top speed is invaluable. That works really well in today's NFL. But I do think that the numbers weren't quite what I was expecting after watching the tape, just in terms of yak per reception. But yeah, dude's incredible. Elite speed, elite acceleration, and agility. He's a very, very solid route runner. Like Mason said, can do everything in the route tree. He's got above average ball tracking skills downfield, I'd say. I don't think it's quite as elite in the short area. I saw him, it's just not consistent. Still good, but not as consistent in the short area, specifically in traffic. I feel like there was quite a few times where I saw him kind of getting lost in the sauce. But other than that, it's really kind of nitpicky what we're talking about as far as negatives go. I saw a lot of great catches outside of the frame too. There was, if you guys watch the highlight tape, and I'm sure many of y'all have, but it's a fun thing to watch. Just watching this guy at his best in a system that takes advantage of the downfield plays. So really enjoyed watching his tape. I agree with you, Lee. I think that if he was in last year's draft class, he would be unquestionably the number 1, even above a very talented JSN. But yeah, let's get to the negatives here. I had same thing that Mason brought up, struggles with press. He needs to expand his release package. After that's something that will be done at the next level. They're going to work with him a lot on that. And then the other thing I just said, isn't the best in contested catch situations. This past season, caught 10 of 21 contested targets. Not bad. It's about a 50-50 ball there. But, when we're talking about elite wide receiver prospects, kind of expected to be a little bit higher than the 50-50 shot. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Evan, and then Mason, and then Lee. I got to go grab my charger. My computer's about to die.
Man, finding these negatives were tough with him, especially because he seems like he really has like a full route tree. He's, like I said, he seems NFL ready for me. I guess one of the things that I'd be curious to see is if he was working with a little bit more of an inaccurate quarterback on some of those deep plays, if his ability to adjust to the ball, things like that. Wasn't able to see too much of that. But again, I wasn't able to see it, so it's still unknown for me. So I really don't have too much to complain about. Similar to Marvin Harrison, didn't have too much to complain about with him either. What do you think over there, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, to me, really, I struggled as well. I think the only thing for me, and it's not. I mean, we see it more and more in today's NFL. He's only 6 foot. Some of the bigger corners, that would be the only concern, but it's not much of one because, again, we see guys even like a Tank Dell, Tiny Tank, who did really well last year. And to me, 6 foot in today's NFL, as spread out as the game is, I don't think it'll be a problem. But that would be the only concern I could name.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we're not talking about Jayden Daniels. I iced space completely. Holy crap. Yeah, never mind, my bad.
Malik Nabers.
So yeah, my negatives on him were hard to find. Like Evan said, I really couldn't find much, and pretty much, yeah, he just struggles with contact plays. Man press. Really physical ones, which is weird because he's a good run blocker. So I don't understand why he just he can be physical, but he struggles with it sometimes. I'm not sure about that. But besides that, I don't really have any cons for him.
Yeah, hard to find some negatives there. And then, yeah, Lee, like you were saying, Tank Dell, a good example of how guys smaller are, it's just not the same NFL these days. We're going to find ways to get talent on the field. It's not always just going to be the, physically dominating 6'4", 220 wide receiver anymore. There's room for everybody in all different types of skill sets. But to bring up ideal landing spots, my first one's, pretty chalk here. Kansas City. If he somehow got to Kansas City, he would become the wide receiver one, I believe, very quickly over Rashee Rice. But Rashee Rice is talented enough to, not have all of the attention going towards Malik Nabers. And then obviously Travis Kelce's still going to be there for another year. So I think that would really make the Chiefs offense back into that pass happy offense that we're used to seeing. Justin Ross. Oh my God.
The wide you're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver one, so that name just came to mind, so I had to throw it up there.
Always on your mind.
Hitting the ball a little early tonight, huh?
It's not over yet. It's not over. I'm still on this hill.
All right. Lee, what do you think?
Ideal that's kind of realistic too is Chicago. I think if they go and add Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams has that arm. And if you look at Chicago, that'd give them Kmet, DJ Moore, and Neighbors, and I just think that would be a really good fit. Honestly, they'd be able to spread the ball deep, probably better than any team in the league.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
I like the Chargers, of course, for obvious reasons.
The Chargers would be a good one. I mean, just time to Herbert. You couldn't go wrong there. Mine isn't as realistic, but Buffalo, pairing with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs is on the way out. Whether he plays another season or two there, he's likely going to be moving on. Big arm, he's great. The deep balls. The weather's a little concerning, but I like Buffalo a lot. The other spot, we've got to bring him up. Tyreek Hill is going to retire in a year or two. It wouldn't be ideal early on, but to be the replacement for Tyreek Hill in Mike McDonald's offense, who would complain?
You say Mike McDonald?
Yeah, Mike McDaniel. Mike McDonald's on my mind too because he was supposed to be our head coach and then he went to Seattle.
We got our Seattle ambulance.
Yeah,
we're gonna take a sip.
There it is.
Speaking of, we got Shrek coming in with a question. What am I sipping on? If I'm drinking bourbon, it's always Basil Hayden. It is my favorite bourbon by a long shot. Go ahead and get yourself a bottle. Drink responsibly. All right. Did anyone not touch on the ideal landing spot here? All right. So we go on to realistic. Really, it's I have the Chargers. I think that is the most realistic landing spot. I do think that there is a shot that they end up going Brock Bowers. They have brought in Greg Roman as their OC. He is, history tells us that he wants to run the ball and utilize a tight end. They don't have a good tight end there. Both Gerald Everett and Donald Parham Jr. are going to be free agents this year. So I think there's a good shot they could bring in Brock Bowers as that playmaker instead of Neighbors. And then the other one I have is the Cardinals, and that is really only if the Patriots end up either taking Marvin Harrison Jr. or trading back and their trade partner takes Marvin Harrison Jr. But those would be the two spots. I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes before the Cards would still be very happy jumping on Malik Nabers, and he'd be an elite weapon for them to utilize there.
You stole those words out of my mouth, man.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to be saying.
Everyone got the same thing for the most part?
Chargers, yeah.
I was going Cardinals, but my other would have been the Giants. And again, it's because they're very lacking of skill positions, so he would probably get 130 targets or more in his first season. I don't know how good those targets would be, but just he would be a volume monster for the Giants.
100%. Yeah, I really couldn't see him slipping past 6. And even if he does, Tennessee's there at 7. I don't think they would pass on him. So he's going to go early. Definitely a good for whatever reason, New York does not have betting on where players go in the draft, which infuriates me year after year. But I think that Neighbors is absolute lock to go top 10. And then if you could place a bet, I would put it on the Chargers there.
I hope the Chargers trade back, honestly. I hope Jayden Daniels is still available and then some other team comes up for him. But,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to trade too far back. You guys need some weapons. I think they've really seen the effects of only having Keenan Allen, Mike Williams going down every year, and then Austin Eckler aging. The offense hasn't looked like what we were used to seeing in Herbert's early seasons. But we'll see how it goes. For the player style comp, I have Garrett Wilson. I said with slightly more acceleration. I think Garrett Wilson and Malik Nabers both have incredible yak ability. And then on top of it, both of them are 6 feet. Garrett Wilson's listed at 195, and I do think that's more around where Malik Nabers is, despite being listed at 200. So that's what I got here. And then for the production comps, I got Garrett Wilson as the high, DJ Moore as the mid, and Drake London so far in his first 2 years as the low.
Yeah, I got a bigger Hollywood Brown, kind of similar full route tree there too, but not as much of a burner. And then that was really it was tough to find a comp for him for some reason for me. Maybe Devonta Smith, a little bit thicker boy.
Yeah, thicker Devonta. I like that.
So I've got the same guy for the production and the style comp, and I think it's kind of the softball. He was the heir apparent, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I like that.
Swinging big.
Obviously, Chase a little bit of a thicker boy, but I think overall I can see that. What do you think, Mason?
Yeah, player comp. I also had Garrett Wilson. I don't even think they're really the same type player. Like you said, like Evan was talking, it was hard to find someone that I thought was, similar. Maybe a little DJ Moore in there. But for my production comp, I just got wide receiver 1. He's going to be not overall, but, top 12 wide receiver. That's I'm a big believer in Neighbors. I think he's going to do great almost no matter where he goes, unless he goes to New England somehow.
All right. So I'll skip over the Dynasty Superflex trade value again. I will say Fantasy Pros has him listed as wide receiver 12 right now. Failed to mention that earlier, but Jayden Daniels listed as QB 17. For where would you take them in a Superflex rookie draft? We already kind of covered it a little bit. I'd personally go 103, and it sounds like the rest of you have 104.
No, I'm 103 unless you need a QB.
Right. Yep. I agree with that. It always team dependent. But this brings us to our final rookie evaluation. We got Brian Thomas Jr., 6'4", 205 with he's 21.4 years old right now. Also, he shares a birthday with me, so that's pretty cool. But yes, right now PFF has him on the big board as 23rd overall pick. Some of the positives I saw for a guy who's 6'4", he's got great speed and acceleration. I think that even the agility and, like the fluidity in his movements is definitely above average. I wouldn't list that as fantastic like I did speed and acceleration, but definitely above average for a guy that's 6'4", 205. I think he is an above average route runner overall. He definitely is a downfield threat. He's not going to be the guy that's hitting on these, quick hitters, no short, shallow crosses, slants. He'll be utilized that way, but that's not where he's going to see the majority of his production. This stat comes from, who was it? Jordan Reed of ESPN. 41% of his production came on go routes last year. That is insane. That is absolutely nuts. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a positive. You don't want a guy to be a one-trick pony. You're not going to be able to get away with that in the NFL. Better corners overall, and then obviously everyone's heard about it, but the constantly got 2 back in deep zone, taking away the big play, and then you gotta rely on being able to get the job done underneath. So that will hurt him a little bit. But the other positives I have, he's got solid release package, doesn't get stacked at the line. Could change a little bit with NFL corners, but not a ton of press coverage ran in percentage, the zone coverage here. And then he tracks the ball very well. This is the thing, though. He rarely catches the ball. He doesn't high point the ball. He doesn't consistently make catches above the shoulders. I feel like I saw him letting the ball travel, and he's got the speed and the space from his defender to let this happen. But I feel like I consistently watched him let the ball get beneath his shoulder and catch it low. And that just reminded me so much of Quentin Johnston, and that hurt my soul, man. That was my number one knock on QJ last year. You're going to be a downfield threat, and you're going to be a 6'4" vertical player. You need to high point the ball and be strong through the point of the catch. So I guess I touched on some of the positives and negatives there. But yeah, just the last negative I had was exactly that. He positions his body well to fend off the DB from making the play. However, he's not like when he doesn't do that, when he doesn't have the opportunity to kind of like box them out, essentially, he's not strong through the point of the catch. And again, being a 6'4", 205 downfield threat, you need to excel in that part of your game. So that's what I had for positives and negatives. Evan, I'm going to kick it to you first this time.
Yeah, it's similar to you with the great size and speed combination. One of the things I noticed about he catches almost everything. He had a 78% catch rate, and the only wide receiver in this class to beat him was a name that I really want to talk about later, who just came on my radar, and I love him already. But Malik Washington, we might talk about him on another episode. But he's also a huge touchdown threat. He caught 17 touchdowns, so a quarter of his catches this past season, literally 25%, were touchdowns.
Wow. That's insane, though. That's almost like a negative because it's such a high rate.
I look at it as a positive.
It's a positive, but it's like you can take a second view on that. Lee, what do you think?
Not every quarter of his catches are going to be touchdowns in the NFL.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, so the natural ability is certainly there. He's very explosive in his change of direction, which helps him gain separation. Should be a red zone threat early just with his positioning. I saw some high pointing, but I kind of agree with you, Dan. I'd like to see it a little more consistently from a guy that's 6'4". I mean, the biggest thing watching him to me is he's very, very raw. So I think the Quentin Johnson bringing him up is apt. The other thing that really scares me, in 24 games prior to this season, he had 6 touchdowns total. Had a little over 600 yards receiving. He doubled his career stats in his last year at LSU as far as yardage and almost tripled his touchdowns. So to see the lack of the production profile up into this year, again, kind of reminiscent of Quentin Johnston. So is he that one-hit wonder? How much did he benefit from Malik Nabers being on the other side of the field and Jayden Daniels' playmaking ability outside of the pocket? Is he more of a product of the offense he was in versus a truly dynamic player going forward? Only time will tell. He's a guy with so much raw potential. He's going to be a first-round pick. Could be later in the first round. I don't think he slips to the second round, especially with the teams we have at the back end of the first round and a lot of them having that need. But just a little – he started playing football in 10th grade. So never played football before 10th grade. It's amazing to see that development. But did he really take that step forward? And I didn't have a chance to watch a ton of 22. Did he really take that step forward, or is it a little bit of a mirage? The touchdowns do scare me a little bit just because there's going to be some regression there, you would think, especially in the NFL. You get in the red zone, it's not as easy. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, my positive, you guys pretty much all said it, his speed, and he's got really good release. That's a big thing. And then release off the line of scrimmage. And I mean, he could be one of the best deep threats in the league, but like Lee touched a little bit, if he doesn't have Jayden Daniels, a guy there that can extend the play and make these deep throws consistently, is he really going to have that much value? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I think him entirely of his value is just the whatever system he goes to, and who's throwing the ball. Because he's not a specialty guy anywhere short, short or mid game. I think there's a ton of other guys that are better than him that I don't see him being great, just having that amazing deep threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to bring us to the ideal and realistic landing spots. Right now, for my ideal, I got Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence last season attempted the third most pass attempts of 20 plus yards, and he was also ninth in terms of the highest completion percentage on those attempts. Those are very solid numbers. Calvin Ridley is unlikely to be re-signed. Christian Kirk's route tree is not the same. He's going to stay more in that 0 to 15 yards downfield. Obviously, not all the time. He can break it off downfield, but Brian Thomas would be a great complement to him. I didn't mean to bring that up for Malik Nabers too. I think that would be, both of them have the downfield ability, and Malik Nabers would be more the prototypical one. It's just not realistic that Jaguars land him with the 17th pick. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. will definitely be there at 17. But the realistic landing spot that I had for him was the Dallas Cowboys. I think that the Cowboys, I think Brian Thomas Jr. could be what they wanted Jalen Tolbert to be, and then also what they signed Brandon Cooks to be. Cooks is still going to be there through this season. They wouldn't gain a lot by cutting him, so I think he will be there in 2024. But I do think that they could utilize CD in the slot a little bit more, throw Brian Thomas on the outside, even if he's just that go route runner. He's going to get the job done and actually produce on those deep threats. So I like those two spots for him a lot. There's others that I like too, but we kind of touched on those teams for other wide receivers.
Yeah.
I had Dallas as my ideal and my realistic.
Yeah.
One, because Brandon Cooks, I was looking at it right now, they'd only save about $4 million, so I don't see them moving on from Brandon Cooks for only $4 million. But maybe it's just a 1 year where he just shows flashes, and in a rookie year, that's all we need. We need some flashes and then a better situation in the years to come. A little nervous though there too, maybe because who knows if Dak's going to be there after this year. That's kind of a question that's kind of been going around. But I think if he is in the future, then him and CD, I think they're a good complement to each other.
I agree.
I would go. I have the same team as the ideal and the realistic as well, and we touched on them a little bit earlier. But Kansas City, they have a not many quality wide receivers right now. I think his game would complement Rashee Rice's pretty well. And I mean, if you could pair yourself with Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey's on the way out. I know he's coming back next year, but we've already seen a bit of a decline. I could definitely see him being the big play threat for Kansas City.
Yeah. Evan?
Yeah, no, I like that Kansas City and a lot of the ones that we talked about too. Pretty much the only ones that we need it the most too. But Tennessee would be another one, and Detroit would be another one that I would like to see too for ideal. But no, they don't really have the mix for it. I don't see him going in the second round, so he'll get taken before then.
All right, I'm gonna speed run the comps here, and I'm gonna skip over the the Dynasty Superflex, but I got the player style comp, George Pickens with better acceleration, but way less aggressive at the catch point. I think that they both have similar styles. I forgot the exact stat, so I didn't bring it up earlier, but Brian Thomas struggled in running routes against zone coverage. NFL runs zone coverage more than 60% of the plays at this point, so that's going to hurt him. But then I got the production comp. The high is T. Higgins, the mid is Gabe Davis, and the low, Quentin Johnson.
I think that George Pickens is spot on because neither one of them are going to really get into a ton of separation too, but both of them can make those catches, the contested catches too. So I love that. That's what I had down there too.
I will
Mason?
third that as well.
Nice. Lee?
I had Pickens also.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
To throw out.
He kind of looks like he runs like him too. I don't know what it was.
Bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. We don't talk about these before the show starts, just so y'all know. So that is pretty wild that we all land on the same player there. So really quick, Brian Thomas Jr. currently ranked as wide receiver 57 by Fantasy Pros for the Superflex rookie draft. I've actually changed my tune a little bit, boys. I know I was down on Odunze after watching more tape on Brian Thomas Jr. Odunze has jumped him in the pecking order. However, as I break down more and more rookie film, I got a new guy ahead of Odunze. We'll leave that as a teaser or beyond that. But right now, I do have Odunze at 8th overall and Brian Thomas Jr. at 9.
I also have Brian Thomas Jr. at 9, but he's behind Odunze as he should be. But he's ahead of Troy Franklin. I'm not as high on Troy Franklin. So.
That was the guy. I wasn't gonna say.
I knew.
Oh, dude, I'm falling in love.
I do not like me. I don't like him. We'll talk. Well, maybe we'll have to do another segment.
We'll definitely do some more episodes. I mean, we're nailing rookies until the draft comes. So,
yep.
All right, Lee, what do you got here?
Where did I rank him as far as
rookie draft, super flex?
Rookie draft, yeah. I mean, he's probably in that 10 range. I do like Troy Franklin above him. I'd say he's definitely a first-round pick, but he's going to be a back-end first-rounder, position-dependent, of course. Because if he goes to Kansas City, he could very well go 7th or 8th overall.
Absolutely.
Because
and where these later round quarterbacks land will drastically affect it too. You know, if we see J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. end up in some good spots, there's a good chance they could jump right above them.
That's right.
But Mason, what do you got here?
Right now, I got him at 109, but I can definitely see him being 110 if he goes to the wrong place.
Okay, yeah. All right, sounds like we're all roughly in the same area there. So this is going to bring us to our next segment. We got QB free agents to talk about. I know that we got the radio broadcast going on here. So if you're interested in some QB free agents, make sure you check out the Stadium Rant YouTube channel. We got a ton of things, some extra content, some more shows, tons of great things. So make sure you check it out. If you like what you see, shoot us a subscribe. It really does go a long way for us in the company. So please check us out. But to talk about these QB free agents, boys, we're going to go a little bit over here. So we got some only one truly big name at the top of the list here. Kirk Cousins heading into free agency. He was already talking about, he said he's been blessed with a very fortunate career. He's made a lot of money, and at this point, it's more about not in terms of money, but the contract he gets in terms of longevity and going out and getting a ring. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands. I think there's a lot of interesting teams out there that they got the cap space to make it happen and the talent on the roster to surround him with some good players. Lee, since he was a former, commander, not commanders at the time, but what do you think? Where do you see him going?
I really only see 2 spots. I think he's either back to Minnesota or to Atlanta. I think Minnesota's going to be a slightly better situation for him. Just, again, you're playing with the best wide receiver in football. He's going to want to be surrounded by offensive talent. Maybe a dark horse for Pittsburgh, but I really think it's between Minnesota and Atlanta.
Okay. Mason, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking if he leaves, most likely he's going to go to Pittsburgh. They've shown a lot of interest in getting someone there, at least complement Pickett. If Pickett starts bad, but if they get Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter. I really only see that or Minnesota. I mean, Atlanta is one, but I don't know. I think Atlanta, starting an entire new coaching system, I think they might want to draft and, build up.
right? And with them having the 8th overall pick, like they got some maneuverability both in cap space and with their picks to make something happen long term. Evan, what are you thinking for Kirk Cousins?
I also have the Steelers. Steelers is my top one for him.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
I'm just thinking about what he would do for those wide receivers on that team too. It would be nice.
Yeah, no, it would be very nice. I think Deontay would have a huge spike because he's the route runner there. And obviously, George Pickens would get a boost from his previous situation. And even Pat Freiermuth, everyone would get a little bit of a boost there with the addition of Kirk Cousins. However, for his landing spot, I like the Raiders. I think that they showed a lot of promise on the defensive side of the ball towards the end of the year. If I don't think they'll bring back Josh Jacobs, but likely that they keep Zamir White, who shows that he can be the ground and pound guy. But I think that Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers would be good enough. Why? Obviously, Devontae Adams is good enough, but both would be a good situation for him to land in. Right now, the Raiders have $35.2 million in salary cap. Right now, it's February 21st. So if you guys are listening to this podcast at a later point, know that these salary caps will be changing drastically. They're going to make more space. They're going to be doing some crazy things here for all of the teams we mentioned. But right now, 35.2 mil to start the year is pretty damn solid. I do think that they could add another wide receiver either in the draft or in free agency. There's a very solid free agent class out there for the wide receivers right now. So I just think that one addition, bringing in Kirk Cousins, could really take the Raiders to at least second in the division, personally. So that's my take on it. Curious what you guys think about that landing spot, though.
I mean, I don't see it completely out there. I saw something today that Raiders are interested in Justin Fields, and I believe there was reports where they were interested in Russell Wilson at some point. So they definitely are looking at quarterback, and I don't think they're going to be drafting a quarterback unless they don't end up picking one up. But I think they're looking on the market for one.
Okay, yeah. And there was recent news. Jimmy Garoppolo got caught with the PEDs. He's suspended 2 games. That apparently that does something for the salary cap. There's going to free up some space. They don't have to pay him like they would have if he was just injured or missing time. So that's going to be big for the Raiders. And they also said that they will be cutting him this year. So no more Jimmy G. They got somebody else to bring in here. And right now, their first draft pick is at 13. So unless they are very content on taking, one of the later round guys like a JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix, I don't think that's going to happen. 13 is too early, in my opinion, for that. But it'll be interesting. I would like to see a veteran presence join this team and really boost Devontae Adams and Jacoby. I know Mason thinks the same about Jacoby.
Yes.
All right. So this brings us to our next player, Baker Mayfield. I just got him going back to Tampa Bay. It doesn't seem like there's another realistic, Tampa Bay seems interested. He did well for him inside that system. My biggest concern for Baker, if he does return, is that it sounds like Mike Evans. Mike Evans isn't going to be returning, which is going to be so weird to see him not in a Buccaneers jersey. But what do you guys have for Baker's landing spot? Evan, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, I love what Baker did, kind of a career resurgence for himself. Like a lot of people thought he would flame out and then be kind of done. But no, me and Mason, I think, expected him to do pretty well here. And but I really don't know how he would do without Mike Evans. It's going to be about the same amount of weapons he's had in the past, and in the past wasn't so great. So I do think that this is the most likely landing spot for him, though. I don't see him moving.
Yeah, I see. I mean, honestly, I got Baker Mayfield in rankings higher than a lot of people probably do. I'm honestly expecting Tampa's going to come out and throw out some big old contract to Baker Mayfield. There's a lot of teams that are looking for quarterbacks, and Baker kind of would fit the description of the QB they're looking for. And I could just see them having to pay him and signing him to a big 3-4 year deal. And, his fantasy value is just going to boom up. So I'm trying to trade for Baker in a lot of leagues right now.
Okay. Lee?
So I mean, I certainly agree. It seems Tampa is the most likely, but if we're looking, if he's going to leave, where does he go? Where does he end up? And I've got one that's a little out of left field, but I could see it, and I could see it working. Denver with Sean Payton. They're looking to move on. They definitely have to move some money around, but he has, with the Drew Brees connection, shown that he can, help resurrect a quarterback's career. You're up there in that thin air. They have some weapons. I still think Marvin Mims is due for a breakout. Baker loves to throw a deep ball. I think he would unlock Marvin Mims. Judy or Sutton's likely gone, but the other one would still be there. We got Greg Dulcich coming back. I could see him being successful in Denver, and I could see that being the replacement for Russell there.
Yeah, to touch on the deep ball you're talking about, he had the fourth most pass attempts of 20-plus yards. He did only complete 29.7% of those. So of quarterbacks with 40 pass attempts or more, that was 21st of 24 qualifying. So not crazy accurate downfield, but he'll take the shots, and that'll bode well for guys like Marvin Mims, like you're saying. All right, so next on the list here, we got Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew, 27.8 years old right now. I see him going to a team that is going to sign him more so as the backup. But I think it's going to be teams that realize the value of a backup now. So I have the Jets as the number one team there. He's also not likely to demand a big contract, and the Jets only have 1.6 million cap space. So right now I have him going to the Jets. I did say maybe Carolina just because they got to be tentative about Bryce Young at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So Carolina's got much more cap space, 26.7 mil, and I could see him being like that veteran presence behind the rookie QB as he develops. Evan, sounds like a hit on yours, so I'll kick it to Mason here.
Yeah, a little idea I could maybe have is he would go to Minnesota if Kirk Cousins leaves. Because so there was talks of Minnesota maybe wanting to move up to the three. Draft a quarterback, but if they don't, if they keep Jefferson is wary about signing a new contract if Cousins is gone. There was reports of that, but if they want to try to keep Jefferson and re-sign him, they're definitely gonna have to bring in at least someone who can throw the rock, and I could see him going there.
Shrek coming up with a Mason comment. How much did you pay Shrek to put this up there?
He knows Baker's the GOAT, man. Let Bakeman bake.
All right, Lee, what you got?
So I'm going to go with a team you named earlier. I think he's a more realistic option for the Raiders. I could see him coming in and being a bridge. The Raiders aren't early enough in the draft to get one of the top three guys, but I could certainly see him drafting a more developmental, J.J. McCarthy or someone like that. And I could see Minshew as a bridge starter, having a real shot to start early on. There is talent on that offense, especially if Devontae stays. And they've already shown that they want to be run first, which actually benefits him because he can take the shots, but you don't want him throwing it too much because we've seen it. He will throw plenty of interceptions.
Yeah. And to your point, even if they wanted to wait until the second round, right now their second round pick is the 44th overall. Right now on the PFF big board, they got Michael Penix Jr. as the 47th overall. Bo Nix is at 36. Other than that, I don't think they would want to slip too much deeper than that. But if one of those guys falls, they could easily go with the rookie and, like you're saying, bring in Minshew as the backup, a reliable guy, especially when he's got talent around him. So the next three guys I'm going to bring up as a group, we have Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, and Joshua Dobbs. All of them 29 years or older. Tannehill is much older at 35.5 years old. You know what? I'm going to throw Jimmy Garoppolo into the mix too. So Jimmy G, Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, and Joshua Dobbs. Really quickly, of the four, which would you prefer to be your backup QB? Lee, I'm going to send it. Oh, I haven't had a quick answer. What did you got?
I got Dobbs for sure. Some of these other guys, I'm surprised to stayed in as long as they did, as well as they did too. So Dobbs, I see him as just a career journeyman, just Ryan Fitzpatrick like, and I'd want him.
I couldn't disagree more. I don't even know if Dobbs will be in the NFL next year. Beyond next year, I don't know. I mean, maybe because of how bad the quarterback position, he burned really hot for a few games in Minnesota, but the vast majority of his career, whenever he's played, it has not been a good result. Jacoby Brissett is by far, to me, out of these guys, the best backup. He's consistent. He's an NFL-level quarterback. He could, to me, I think the Jets are probably the best spot for him. With Rodgers' age, we don't know how quickly and what he's going to look like after injury. I think Jacoby is head and shoulders the best backup of these four. I think Tannehill is the only one that has a chance. It's an outside chance, but the Arthur Smith connection, if Pittsburgh strikes out, if they end up with a second or third round quarterback, I can see Tannehill coming into Pittsburgh as a bridge starter as well.
That was the report that I heard was that the Steelers are interested in Tannehill. Then really quickly, just to jump back a second, I saw a reasonable starting point on a contract extension for Baker would be around 3 years, $75 million. So that's interesting. I would imagine there's an early out in that contract where there's low dead cap if they needed to cut bait. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I completely agree with you with Jacoby Brissett. That would be by far my number one. When he was with the Browns, before Deshaun Watson started taking over, he was supporting Amari Cooper as the top 12 wide receiver. The Browns at the time were a top 10 scoring offense in the league. He had the team moving, and at the time that wasn't an elite defense either. So he was putting in the work. I don't think he's not a guy I want to start, but a guy that I'm comfortable having start if my starter's out. Mason, did you touch on this?
No. Out of those four, I just got to say, definitely not Jimmy G. I've experienced him on my team. I would never want him back on my team. But yeah, I would probably honestly go with Tannehill. I mean, I know, say what you want, but I don't know. I've always liked Tannehill. Last year was rough, but hey, who knows? I mean, Joe Flacco had some down years towards the end, and look at what he did this year. I mean, old man revive. Let's go.
All right, just to run through them all, I'm gonna go Jimmy G. I have him going to Atlanta. They're at $25 million in cap space right now. I don't think Jimmy G will be expensive, and I do expect Atlanta to take a quarterback at number 8. So I think that would be a solid landing spot for him as a veteran backup. Tannehill, there's already been the connections to Pittsburgh. Right now, Spotrac has his estimated value for his contract at 1 year, $4.9 million. Even with them being $6 million under the salary cap, that is very affordable contract for a backup and a guy that's got some veteran experience. I got Jacoby Brissett going to the Giants or the Titans. A little bit opposite ends of the cap space spectrum. Giants with about 19.4 million cap space, and Tennessee with 65.3. But if Tennessee decides to roll with Will Levis, like me and Lee were talking about, Will Levis is risky. Jacoby Brissett is not. So you have him as a solid backup. If you feel like you're in it because that division is still pretty much up for grabs, you can throw in Brissett if you're looking to get the job done. And then for Joshua Dobbs, I got Baltimore. I thought that was a solid fit. I think that is basically Tyler Huntley +1 in every category. So maybe outside of just straight line speed. But other than that, I think Joshua Dobbs would be a great fit for Baltimore. I personally don't hope he goes there because I'm a Browns fan. And I think he would be a decent enough backup. Just don't ever show him the playbook, and he'll play incredible for you. As soon as you let him know what the plays are, starts overthinking with that big bald brain of his. So, that didn't offend nobody out there. But
all I gotta say is that division is not open. That's CJ Stroud's division, man.
Man, I don't know. He showed out. It's definitely the Texans to lose at this point. I just don't think they are so out there as the leader that is unwinnable. So that's where I stand. I'll let y'all run through the gauntlet here. We got Jimmy G, Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, and Joshua Dobbs. I see Lee shaking the head a lot here. I'm gonna send it his way.
So yeah, I already said I think the Jets for Jacoby. They're
Yep.
definitely going to bring in a better backup. They're not going to be in the same situation they were this past season. And if he got playing time, I could definitely see him produce. Tannehill again. The Steelers feel like the obvious choice. Outside of that, I mean, it's tough to really find a landing spot for Tannehill. Maybe if Cousins leaves, Minnesota gets a mid to late round pick. Maybe he can come in there as a bridge. Jimmy G, man, it's tough with that suspension as well.
Only 2 games.
Only 2 games, but still, you know, he underperformed so much this year, and then having that albatross around his neck, maybe back to New England for Jimmy G.
I almost wrote that, but it felt like too crazy, you know.
I mean, again, in that backup role, you know, if they draft a quarterback at 3 and completely move on from Mac. And for Dobbs, I think he's going to Toronto to be an Argonaut.
All right.
We hear that opinion loud and clear. Evan, you got some rebuttal for Joshua Dobbs?
I mean, he did great when he was asked upon him, and when, you know, of course, there's the playbook. Once he learns the playbook, he's not exactly great, but I mean, still, it wasn't terrible in any regard. He wasn't absolutely terrible. So some of the other guys I've seen absolute terrible performances from, especially to Tannehill. Tannehill's at the bottom of my list. Then probably Jimmy G, then Brissett, and then Dobbs would be at the top. And then landing spots, it's just a crapshoot for all these guys. You honestly have no idea. It's like draw straws.
Fair enough. Mason?
I mean, I'm feeling the same way. It's draw straws. I mean, one of them's probably going to go to the Jets because they do not want another Rodgers situation. I could see it being Jimmy.
Need another year of Zach Wilson.
I mean, I could see it being Garoppolo just because, you know, Garoppolo is pretty much only good in the short game. Anything else is kind of out the book. And you got guys like Wilson and Breece Hall that will be are available to make better plays for Jimmy. So I could see him kind of going there. And then maybe like on the other one, I could kind of think is maybe Brissett just staying in Washington because they're going to be drafting a young guy, you know, have a vet presence there.
That's true. That's a good point.
Actually, you know, maybe the Chargers need a backup because, you know, after Herbert went down, it was not pretty for us. So
that's true too. I mean, you don't want to go with Easton Stick.
Yeah, Easton Stick.
That's a hell of a last name.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll just bring up one final player here. Comeback Player of the Year, Joe Flacco. Right now, I got Joe Flacco going to Minnesota. I do think that Minnesota makes a push to try to get a rookie quarterback in this draft, and I think that Joe Flacco would be a fine enough backup playing in a dome, nice and chill for this old man. Nice, kind Minnesotans up there welcoming him in. But yeah, no, I got him going to Minnesota, and I honestly do think that if he was thrust upon a starting role, I think he could put up numbers. I think he could put up numbers based on what we saw him do with the Browns wide receiver core. Give him JJ, Jordan Addison, and eventually Hawkinson coming back. That'd be fun to watch.
Let's see him stay in the AFC North over there and go to Cincinnati just in case.
No, don't you do that to me?
I think it's kind of realistic. Joe Flacco does what he did this year. He's not going to be on a team until halfway through the season, where like Deshaun Watson goes out, or like if Purdy went out halfway through the season, you know, I'd be like, all right, let's go call up Joe Flacco. You know, that's right. Probably the move. And I think Flacco's at that age where he's just playing for rings. He has the money, so you know he's going to only play on a team that has a true shot.
Right, dude's not signing before training camp.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, he wants to enjoy home with his family and not do anything and then come pull some crazy move again.
Yeah, 39.1 years old right now. Lee, if he goes anywhere, where do you think he goes?
Back to Cleveland is his best option. You know, there's a lot of question marks with Deshaun Watson. They got a lot of money tied up in him, but, you know, as a backup in Cleveland, if he leaves, again, one of the ones you said earlier, I could see him going to Tennessee and being a backup for Will Levis, you know, having an opportunity to play potentially there.
Very similar. So a very similar situation to what he would have been playing in with the Browns. You know, you got the one veteran, proven guy in D-Hop, an unproven younger guy, Treylon Burks, equivalent to Elijah Moore, and then like an athletic tight end. Although Okoronkwo, or not Okoronkwo, help me guys,
Okonkwo.
Conquo.
Okonkwo.
Okonkwo. We're talking about the Browns, and I said our defensive end Okoronkwo instead of Okonkwo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got they're both very athletic, although one's more proven than the other. I do think that'd be a similar situation and a team that needs it. I could see them doing that for sure. And that, did you have a second team, or was it the Titans you said?
Well, the only other one I was going to throw out, I know the Jets sure wish that they had still had him this past season. He knows the offense already. If they strike out on any other, a little bit higher profile backup quarterbacks, I could see him going back to the Jets.
Okay. All right. So there's some other guys to talk about here. I'm going to just bring up the rest of the free agent quarterbacks. Tell me, of these grouping of players, who would you most like to have as your backup QB or starter, if God forbid that is forced upon them? And then whoever you choose of this list, tell me who you think they would go to. We have Mitchell Trubisky, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, and Tyler Huntley. Let's say it's just a one-year deal, so youth is not factored in here. But which quarterback would you like to be your backup, and what team do you think would sign them? I'm going to kick it to Mason first.
Well, let's bring back the boy Sam Darnold to San Francisco.
Awesome.
I mean, he didn't get much playing time except in that Ravens game. I think was his only time really playing, besides snapping the ball, just taking a knee and then a throw here or there, garbage time stuff. But I mean, he looked okay, and I mean, with the system we have, any quarterback can kind of make that system work. So,
yeah, Lee.
Yeah, I was going to say Darnold, and there's really two on that list that stand out to me that have potential that could maybe still be unlocked. No pun intended. Drew Lock and Sam Darnold. And I would the same spot. Denver is going to need a quarterback. There's an option for some playing time there. If they strike out completely, and again, they're going to be eating a lot of money, whatever they decide to do with Russell Wilson. I could definitely see one of those guys going to Denver and having an opportunity paired with Sean Payton, thin air. Could see a career turnaround. I know Locke would be going back, but hey, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, for sure. Evan?
Well, Tyrod's got two lungs, and we punctured one of them. I think we could do another one. So let's bring him back to the Chargers. But I do think that Drew Lock is the most talented quarterback on this list for age perspective too, and didn't get too much of an opportunity to show what he's got. So I think he would be the most viable QB out of the rest of this list.
Yeah, no, that was one of the reasons why I brought it down to 1 year. I just wanted there to be an even playing field for 26-year-old Sam Darnold versus 34-year-old Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod played on the Giants last year towards the end of the season. Didn't put up too bad of numbers. Had 20.68 points, 21.76 points in the last two games of the year. Was at 297 and 319 passing yards with no weapons available. So I do think that of this grouping, that'd be the guy that I would want for 1 year. And right now, SpotTrack has him at $3.3 million per year on average. So very affordable backup to get. That's the guy I would go with personally. If we're just talking 1 year, I agree. If it's long-term, Sam Darnold. But that is going to do it for the Fantasy Rant podcast. Had a fun time going over, talking some free agents with y'all. We'll be back again next week talking some more rookies and free agency pickups. Join us. Check out the YouTube page, Twitter, Instagram. We got it all here. All right. Have a good week, y'all.
Please hire an offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan.